I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. You've come across, again, the least SEO podcast on the planet, and I like to think of these as love letters to the SEO community, laced with a fair amount of tough love. These episodes are short, and if they work out as intended, maybe keep you thinking a little bit after the show's over. And remembering, like, the real challenge here in our industry, keep challenging ourselves. What do we know? And how can we stay out of victimhood when it comes to updates? Now, I prod SEO principles indirectly into these little short essays, but I do intend every episode to highlight the human side of SEO. Welcome to Confessions of an SEO 2024 Mountain Edition. Like last week, I am coming to you from the Green Mountains of Vermont on this 8th episode of the summer. I kind of went back to say, what have I already talked about, right? So I started off the summer with episode 22, which I think was a hit. What's the canonical got to do with it? And it's a lot. And then there was fast food SEO, which talks about how a lot of our industry speaks in assumptions as though they're facts. The problem with this is it limits our ability to have the same confidence to teach ourselves, to feed ourselves on the truly nutritious SEO that doesn't limit our ability to develop this trust in our knowing, while at the same time identifying our own assumptions that hold us back. And we just had no idea. And then there was eye for an eye SEO, which it was fun when it was just talking about, I'd heard in a presentation where they talked about this eye for an eye energy. It's not exactly literally an eye for an eye, but it's the concept that we think that if we accept something, for instance, something we cannot counter with data or, only with our emotions, it's like that if we do that, then we might as well give up everything that we've achieved so far, which is why people fight something new. And then there was episode 26, a reminder that buying is hard for all of us, not just us, like when we're trying to buy something, but all the people that come to our client sites, to our sites. It ain't easy. And we can let that reminder kind of guide us as we approach conversions. And then episode 27, I called that one Schadenfreude SEO. Basically, it was my question, as a forensic SEO, is being thrilled to bits, finding the problem on that site, which has been harming that business. Does that make me a bad person? Last week's episode was about getting curious. It was my reaction to publishers and writers who think it's Google's fault that their site is struggling and missing the opportunity to figure it out, to basically go from a bitter SEO to a better SEO. I should have called it that. Anyway, this weekend is a variation on last week's topic. That's my new word for stop doing what you're doing and consider something else. Anyway, I wanted this week, and I'm calling this the SEO Content Struggle Bus. This came from an article published June 10th in Search Engine Land. The writer is meant to, explain what Google meant when Danny Sullivan acknowledged, complaints from site publishers about their sites struggling to get organic traffic. He said, if you're one of these sites that's having trouble, there's 3 core areas you should focus on. Continue creating high quality content. I think is best for your readers. That's 1. 2, diversify your traffic sources and promote your content across multiple channels. That's been 3, and engaged directly or via email and social. All very sound advice. There's so much I want to say about that, but I think I'm going to save it for another show. Danny is also known to say, don't work on content that is written primarily for search engines. He is also in the unenviable position of dealing with folks who are keen, easy button. And I'll quote him, as I've said before, I think everyone should focus on doing whatever they think is best for their readers. I know it can be confusing when people get lots of advice from different places. And then they also hear about all these things that Google is supposedly doing or not doing. They just want to focus on content. So if you're lost again, focus on that. That is your touchstone. Okay. And then there's artificial intelligence, AI. It's pretty clear to me that a lot of folks have made the equivalent assumption that AI content equals content written for search engines. But is it? Is it really? What is content written for search engines? I mean, I have some ideas. I've experienced a few things, and I don't think we've really had a full and wholesome conversation about that. But I digress. I want to go back. Google says, write for people, not for search engines. But who is an SEO who isn't trying to do things to get Google to find their content? One can really understand the underlying frustration that we're told, write for people, not for search engines, and don't worry about what Google is doing. Now, there was another section in the article, and it very much, focused on this frustration. They recognize that there is frustration with Google's advice, which always tends to be some variant of create helpful content. However, as they go on to say, Google can't tell you everything you need to do to create helpful content or help you assess it. Amen. We're preaching to the choir now. I will continue talking about helpful content until we all or more of us get it, not just me and a few people. When I published my helpful content analysis, someone who I deeply respect, who's both familiar with my work and that of Corey Gruber, but basically this person made the connection that I had found helpful content through testing and field observation and came to that same topical fulcrum of the helpful content system as Corey did through his extensive analysis of Google patents. Now, he put sites together out of the gate that initially repelled any unhelpful content. And I work to fix sites that are struggling in these now helpful content SERPs. If you are an SEO and you have not heard about Corey, he's a Turkish SEO who's done a brilliant academic job on topical relevancy, and that is putting it mildly. Those that may discount his work are kind of on a fool's errand. I am on a mission for our industry to realize that helpful content does not mean helpful content directly for people that visit your site. Helpful content, or remember, if there's one way to describe it, there's the opposite way to describe it, or the presence of the unhelpful content tag is a negative factor. If you've got pages that go in and out of the SERPs, or you see a loss of impressions, well, that's nothing short of saying that Google has lost all trust in your content and has nothing to do with your EAT, most likely. You bet. Ultimately, the lack of, let me phrase this again. It's the lack of helpful content or the presence of unhelpful content that is the ranking factor. So if you have it, that will de-rank you. If you don't have that unhelpful tag, it will help you. Now, if you're struggling and reading articles written to help you, quote, fix your site, but they're doing nothing but confusing you, there is a reason why that is. I hesitate to say it's not your fault, but there's a reason behind it. And it takes a little bit of critical reading to see that these articles are like that incredible story premise that kept you engaged and is really clever and kept your imagination until chapter 2. And it's clear that the writer had ultimately no real way to end it without being predictable. So there's all of these, quote, here's what you need to do to fix your article sites, and they fall off the cliff. And they get to a point where in order to come to this conclusion, they make connections between two things that are illogically connected. Just because people say, write, or keep repeating that two things are connected, it does not make them so. Again, just because people say, write, or keep repeating something does not make it so. When it was possible to test in Google on a single domain, and let's say I wanted to do a title test on 10 pages, but I wrote the articles in a way that unintentionally turned in what I said was a title test into a keyword density test, there is no way that data is going to stay clean, no matter what I say. That extra factor is now interfering with any type of signal I could have hoped to got from a test like that. So why would I want others to do what I did? Why would I promote what I did when ultimately I didn't do what I said I was going to do without truly learning anything that I could, in all confidence, say was about title tags? It is with confidence that I affirm, based on data and evidence that the helpful content is only helpful content by virtue of what Google considers helpful content. It is not your visitor. So when they tell you to do what you think is best for your readers, it's not that they are saying write helpful content, even though they are using those exact words, create helpful content. Did you get that? Okay, so they're using the same word, but they're meaning two different things, and you only have one side of the equation. On the other hand, like you've got Google giving you word salad, and on the other hand, a majority of advice that you find about helpful content is of a CRO nature, conversion rate optimization. Now, I have nothing against CRO. It's how we can capitalize on revenues or relationships, okay? This is not an anti-CRO, but the point is, CRO is after the click, when someone is on your site, after finding you. The helpful content system is about what goes on before the click. Helpful content is an obscured domain factor. So if you're struggling, likely you're trying to solve an SEO problem with CRO advice, even well-meaning, highly accurate CRO advice. You know, there are click data streams that Google uses. So I'm not saying CRO doesn't help in ranking. What I'm saying is it does not solve a helpful content issue. And we're so used to thinking of updates as being one thing, that if we fix this one thing, our site will rebound. Or if Google takes that out of their algorithm, then we're going to spring right back up to the top. Have you heard the phrase, many ways to skin a cat? Well, there are many ways to get an unhelpful content tag from the helpful content system classifier. The one that doesn't get a lot of press at the moment is the one I mentioned in last week's episode. One real problem is old school SEO. Pick a keyword, any keyword, write content using that one keyword, then rinse and repeat. That's how I know if you're working on that type of keyword strategy without understanding how helpful content impacts that strategy. Maybe you're doing it mostly right, and maybe you're doing it really badly. The point is, if you don't know what you're doing and you're getting different results, even though you're doing the same thing, you're getting different results. Let me rephrase that. You think you're doing the same thing and getting different results. You could be feeling pretty frustrated right now. Likewise, if you're struggling, it will likely appear like the problem is Google. But so far, what I've seen in recoveries and in my testing, this set of SERPs is radically different than the one where that keyword strategy I just described used to work. Now, consider a pre-helpful content system backlink strategy. It probably intersected with the spam update. Backlinks on really bad, poorly themed, contextually themed sites that could have been throwing some power to your content previously, or power to your backlinks to links that linked to your content. You can kind of see how these conditions can stack on each other to create negative outcomes. Now, if anything I've said in here sounds like something that's been frustrating you, please pick up the helpful content analysis. It's at a reasonable price, $55. You can find it at CarolynHolzmanSEO.com. Do not use the secure version. It's http://CarolynHolzmanSEO.com. And the more I think about it, I think we're going to need some vehicle to circulate not just what helpful content is, but what to do to avoid it and how to organize content. I'm going to chew on that for a minute. And if you're interested, you're under no obligation if you do this, but if you're interested, text the letters HCS for Helpful Content System to 512-222-3132. You're not, again, obligated. It just gives me an idea if there is a need for a confidential group learning environment. So watch this space. Well, that's it for me this week. Remember, forensic SEO is what you do when you've done everything you can think of, but nothing changes. To stay on the cutting edge of the state of indexing, check out Crawl or No Crawl on Substack. And I also have a new paid service to get the best pair of eyes to confirm if you've got a helpful content issue. All you have to do is add a Gmail helpful content system at gmail.com to your verified search console site. Get in touch with me. I'll review the data and prepare a video for you to go along with my notes. Thank you for being a listener. If you have any questions or even other topic ideas, I really want to hear from you. And again, it's the same number. You can text 512-222-3132. Thanks again. And until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.